Excuse me.
Right now.
Excuse me. I apologize for the brief delay due to some technical issues, but my name is Parker Williams. I'll be hosting this workshop for WEC Week. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to those online. So we have two wonderful hosts from InterVarsity. So we have Rob Narsky and Elizabeth Lloyd here leading our Evangelism 321 workshop. I'd like to thank you for coming once again. And just a reminder to those online, if your camera's on, you will be visible to everyone in the room. So just be aware of that. If you need to turn your camera off, that is fine. And we will have a Q&A session at the end, Lord willing. And if you are online, please use the raise your hand feature so that we can acknowledge you and have you ask your question as well. Are there any other questions before we begin? All right, excellent. Can we give a warm welcome to Rob and Elizabeth?
Good morning, everyone. It is still morning, yes. Like I said, I'm Rob Narsky. My colleague and friend Elizabeth we're here from InterVarsity, representing specifically the graduate and faculty ministries. So we focus our ministry on graduate students, professional students, and faculty to the 321 Evangelism Workshop. Before we get started, part of the technical difficulty was the transfer of the slides to another computer messed up my fonts. So please. My name is Rob. You see a picture of my family, my younger son, Emery, my wife, Fietka, and my older son, Raleigh. We've been married for over 20 years. I have been on staff with InterVarsity for 10 plus years. Just over 9 of that was as campus staff at the University of Michigan. And now I just recently moved into an area director position to supervise staff for the whole state of Michigan. Before that, I worked in the oil and gas industry for 9 plus years. My background is chemistry, a PhD in chemistry, and God kind of shut those doors really quickly and moved me to ministry. But it's been a wonderful transition. Also, I am a DTS alum. I graduated from the Houston Extension site in 2009. And I'll let Elizabeth tell a little about herself.
Hi, all. I'm Elizabeth. I was born and raised in DFW and came back here for my Master of Arts in Theological Studies. Apologize, I am not a DTS alum. I went to Reformed Theological Seminary here in Dallas, and I had every intention of getting out of Dallas really quickly when I graduated, but God called me to stay here and work with grad students, professional students, faculty, international students, all of the above at SMU and at UT Dallas. And so I've been doing that for going on 5 years now. Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And just a little history about InterVarsity. I don't know how familiar people are. InterVarsity has its roots in England, back with British InterVarsity. They named it for inter between students, and varsity, which is the name or the title they use for college university students. And it's not sports related in that sense. And that's back in the 1928. They brought the movement to Canada. And 10 years later, the Canadian workers had students in the U.S. wanting help to start chapters. And I'm happy to say that the first U.S. chapter was at the University of Michigan. And then 1946, many of you might be familiar with the Urbana conferences. That was the first Urbana conference, which was actually in Toronto. The Urbana comes from the name when it was later moved to Champaign-Urbana at the University of Illinois for many, many years. 1947, helped form the International Fellowship of Evangelical Students, which connects InterVarsity to student movements over 160 countries. And then in 1990s, more prevalent or more for our work, they split off from the undergrad or just the whole work with students to the graduate and faculty ministry, because they discovered that they realized that the culture and ethos of graduate and professional students was a lot different from undergrads, and so they had to minister to them in different ways and provide different types of communities, but to be able to reach them and to provide meet the needs of them in that sense. So why we want to talk about evangelism, and so evangelism for our students, and I imagine many students, not just our graduate students, it is almost like a four-letter word. You know, you hear evangelism, or you talk to them, let's do some evangelism. They look like deer in headlights, and they get terrified. You know, and for me, growing up, I would imagine that they probably have these visions of a street corner preacher screaming at people as they walk by, or going door to door, making cold calls and talking to people that they don't really know. And why am I doing this? In another objection I've heard from students is that they don't want to force their beliefs on other people. They see evangelism almost like as forcing their beliefs. And so, which is a tragic thing, because we have like the greatest gift in the world, and we should share it with others. And so how do we help them overcome that? And so the foundation we help try to provide for our students to help release a lot of that stress and fear are two things. The first one is God goes before us. So, you know, we don't want them to have the concept that they're taking Jesus somewhere or to someone, but God's already there working in people's lives, working in a place, and we're just going to go there and work with them. And then the second part of the foundation is pray, look, cooperate. And so let's kind of break that down. Well, God going before us, we can see in Colossians, Paul is sharing, he says, and pray for us too, that God may open a door for our message. And then later in verse 5, he says, be wise in the way that you act toward outsiders, make the most of every opportunity. So we want our students to realize that God's working and God's moving, and we're just going to go and allow and follow and be obedient to that which he has called us and where he's providing. Pray, look, cooperate. I have to give credit to this. This is not mine. It was about 15 or 16 years ago at a DTS series of messages from Dr. Mark Jobe, who is now president of Moody Bible Institute. He spoke on this, and this is one of those things that my wife and I grasped onto. We actually have a big plaque in our house. It's like our family theme or our motto. We have up on our fireplace mantle. It says, pray, look, cooperate. So what does that look like? And what do we tell our students about this? It starts with prayer. Everything we do, not just evangelism, is going to start with prayer. And we can see in Jeremiah, the prophet talks about in his letter to the exiles in Babylon, down in the verse 7, it says, seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, or its welfare, for in its welfare you will have welfare. So we want to pray, one, for the welfare of the university, but in our context, the welfare of the university or the neighborhood that we're in. So then we will also benefit from that welfare. But we also want to pray for God to open our eyes to see what he's doing around us and the people in our lives already. So we want to, the second part, look. We're going to look around and see what God is already doing around us. The part, leads directly from the prayer. Looking around, having the discerning eyes, and listening to the Holy Spirit to discern what is God doing already around us. Because we're not going to, we're not, as sometimes we get so arrogant to think, I'm going to go start this. No, God's already there. He started this. Where is he doing it? So we want to recognize and see that. And then leads us into, Paul in Acts 17, he talks about his spirit being provoked within him as he was observing the city full of idols. So Paul stood in the midst of the Areopagus and said, men of Athens, I observe that you are very religious in all respects. So he was looking and seeing what God had already done or was already doing there in Athens. Then, once we see what God's doing, we want to join in that or cooperate with what he's doing. And then again, later in that passage in Acts 17, Paul's, I proclaim, therefore, what you worship in ignorance, this I proclaim to you, that God made the world and all things in it. since he is the Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in in temples made by hands, that they would seek God, if perhaps they might grope for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. Therefore, having overlooked the times of ignorance, God is now declaring to men that all people everywhere should repent. So Paul saw what he was doing, and he is partnering and cooperating, and then he is declaring what God has asked him to declare to the people in Athens. And that's what we're supposed to do in terms of, especially with evangelism. What do we do? What do we see God doing with our students and the friends of our students? We want our students to see that, with some of the questions or the interactions they have with their lab mates or their friends who aren't believers. What is God doing? And to be able to give them the eyes to see what's going on. So and along with that foundation that helps them see that this is not their responsibility, but they're just cooperating with what God is doing, we want to give our students a framework and to help operate. Okay, and this is taken from a book entitled "I Once Was Lost," and what they did here is they surveyed a couple thousand or so postmodern people about their path to faith. Okay, and what that process was like for them, and what they saw is that there were 5 distinct thresholds that people walked through. Now, not every person walked through every threshold, or spent the same amount of time there. But this is just a framework we want to give our students. This is not like written in stone, and it's not like a hard process, but it gives our students understanding. Okay, where is your friend? Is your friend at the first threshold, which is trust? Do they trust a Christian, or do they distrust a Christian? So you want to move a person in that first threshold from distrust to trust, and you being their friend is a huge indication of whether they, do they trust you? And if they do, then that's they've moved to that threshold. Second one, curious. Are they curious, or are they indifferent about your faith? Do they are you in a part of a group of friends that, you're a Christian, one person's an atheist, one is a Buddhist, and they don't see any conflict of beliefs there. They're just not curious about it. Do we move them from not being curious to being curious? Third threshold, open. Are they open? Are their hearts open to change in their life? Do they see a dissonance in what they believe right now and what others do? Is there something that they feel like they need to change? Not necessarily specifically Christianity at this point, but some kind of change. And then there's the fourth threshold, was seeking after Jesus. So are they going from just kind of curious about spiritual things to specifically focusing on who is Jesus? What did Jesus do for me? And is this something I want to believe for the rest of my life? They normally found the seeking probably lasts, I don't know, anywhere from a short period of time, I don't know, but no more than maybe a year. Just 9 months to a year is usually the time frame where people spend in that threshold. And then the last threshold is making that decision and to follow Jesus and taking that step of faith. Okay, there are handouts I think I posted that were online that kind of walk out a little more detail about this. You're welcome to have those in digital copy. So how does this framework and these foundations help with these students? Okay, they have the foundation. It's not them, it's God. The framework, okay, where are my friends in this, and at what stage, how do I move them from threshold 3 to 4, or from 2 to 3, or from 4 to 5? How do I do that? Okay, this is the structure where we want our 3-2-1 evangelism. We provided this for our students, and we found that if we give them this simple structure, it takes away a lot of the stress and the concern about how do I do this? And so, and it's done in community as well. Okay, so the 3 is we ask them to pray daily, identify and pray daily for 3 non-Christian friends. Okay, and we have a little tool for them. We call this a 2+ card, and it's a card. It's pretty cool. It has a place to write the names of your friends, and then it also on the back side. It talks about the 5 thresholds. You can kind of review and see where that is. I do have those, and so if you want to pick one or some of those up afterwards, I'm happy to give you those as a tool or a reminder of what we do. So 3 non-Christian friends, pray for them daily. Very low bar commitment here, right? Second, the 2, we ask the community, in this sense, like usually our student chapters or student small group, to host 2 hospitality events a semester. What does that look like? It could be a game night. It could be a dinner. It could be, oh, this event's happening on campus, and we'll go as a group and go to the event and then go have coffee or dinner afterwards. And so it's an exposure to their friends, and then inviting their friends, and exposure to their friends of what Christian community is like. So they can kind of feel the difference. They may not recognize it right away, but they should feel a difference between the community that they normally hang out with and the community of believers, one would hope. And then our 1 is we ask them the chapter 1 time a semester is make a call to faith or a call to move closer to Jesus. All right. So whether that's in a small group or in a larger group setting, that's determined on the individual chapters. And the way we like to try to structure it for them is that we don't want to single out just the non-believers in the room. So many times the way we teach or train our students to make those calls of faith is to make a call first to those who are already followers of Christ. What can you do? What is Jesus calling you to do right now to move closer to him? And then you also so that can be 2 ways. And then if you're not a believer, what is Jesus calling you now to move closer to him? And what does that look like? And offering them a pathway to do that. So we don't single out the non-believers in those, even the small groups or larger groups, but we make that a call to everyone to move closer to Jesus. And it's going to look different ways for different people. And so that's our 3-2-1 structure. That is all supported by the 3 things on the outside. So hospitality, inviting, and conversations. So to be able to do the 3-2-1 conversation or the 3-2-1 evangelism, we need to help our students understand what hospitality is, what inviting is, and conversations, and how to have those conversations. Any questions so far? Yes.
So with the call to faith, is it moving, I guess, in the direction of the 5 thresholds?
Yes. So it's but we wouldn't use those words because if there's non-believers in that room, they're not going to understand it, and they're going to be like, oh, they've labeled me somehow. It's just a framework for our friend or for our students to be able to be like, okay. Like I said, there's a handout. I think it's the which one was it? It was the 5 thresholds active response. And so what that sheet does, if you look at it, shows it different at each of the thresholds. Okay, what are some questions I can ask my friends? What are some activities I can do with them to kind of engage them at that threshold and move them through that threshold? Just suggestions. And your friend might spend months, weeks, or years at one threshold or another, and they might move backwards or move forward. It's like I said, it's not a strict structure. It's just kind of a framework for our students, and it's a fluid thing. So, okay. Other questions? Okay. So we'll start with hospitality. What does good hospitality look like? That's a question to you. to people. What does good hospitality look like?
Food.
Food?
Parties.
What was that?
Parties.
Party things?
Parties.
Yes.
Parties.
Okay, very good. Others?
I mean, a pastor of mine really did this really well. He invited us to his house.
Yeah.
And so in the end, and it was the most comfortable place to actually do Bible study or anything,
Right.
because in the end, that's where, and just have a snack and he would be open and honest and
Right.
vulnerable about his marriage and about his life along with his wife. And
Mhm.
we all knew each other, so it was just a good group of friends, and it went on for a long while. So yeah.
Yeah, so open up your home and, you know, be more vulnerable with people. I think, you know, and hospitality, good hospitality looks different for different people. I think I like to compare it to love languages. You know, my love language is different than my wife's. And so, if I express love to her and what I like, which is, you know, which is acts of service and time spent, when her number one love language is gifts, she's not going to feel loved, right? So we need to try to help understand the people we want to be hospitable to. What is their sense of good hospitality? And especially when we're interacting and hosting international students, it looks a lot different to them what hospitality is than to us. So that's where we need to kind of grow and understand. So inviting, I know the font is just wonderful, isn't it? Inviting, we have a 3-step method. So not every invitation is a good invitation. Would you not agree? Maybe. So,
哎，
可以帮忙说一下这上面那个，我们在开会是不是？
你要什么？
这上面那个 password，其实搞不定，怎么想？
sorry. So not every invitation is a good invitation. So we have a 3-step method that we want to try to teach our students. Step 1 is the event. What is it? What are you inviting them to, or what are you inviting them into? Why am I going? I'm inviting you, but why am I going? And 3, the invitation. We'd like you to join us. See, this is where, and then now this is kind of where we're going to slow down a little, and you guys get to get in a little involved here because we're going to do some role playing. But Elizabeth's going to join me, and we're going to model that for you. And then I'm going to ask you guys to pair up or get in 2s or 3s and practice an invitation to an event. Make it up on the fly. It doesn't have to be a real event, but let's try that. Okay.
Can I do a bad invitation first?
You want to invite first? Okay. All right. Are you going to invite me badly? Or
Hi, Rob. I'm going to Bible study Tuesdays at 3 p.m. in Hughes Trigg, room 129. Do you want to come with me?
I think I'm busy. All right. So remember our 3 steps. Let's walk it back here. Yeah. The event, what it is, why I'm going, and do you want to join us? Hey, Elizabeth, how's it going? I'm doing all right. How'd that test go last week?
It's terrible.
Yeah? Oh, it's never good, huh? Well, Rebecca and I are heading over to talk on campus about mental health in the academy. And, you know, I've been really looking forward to this because of all the stuff that's been happening around the university and the world. You know, I've been kind of wondering what I can do and how things, you know, just looking for a new perspective. And I was wondering if you would like to join us.
Yeah, I feel like I've been wondering some of the same things and looking for some resources on that. So I might be interested.
Okay, yeah, it's next Tuesday evening, and we were thinking about going to dinner beforehand, and if you want to join us as well, and then we could head over to the talk.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so I will text you about more of the details the day before and then follow up. So, all right.
good.
Okay. See the difference? So she doesn't feel the pressure. So and sometimes the invitation is, hey, do you want to go to a movie? Or so these people you can kind of interpret it, well, if I don't go with them, they're not going to go. So it's always, what helps this is if you have a third or a fourth or a group of people that are going already, you're already going no matter what. And you're just inviting them to come along. Okay, telling them why you're going, and they may have their own reasons. Okay, so pair up, and I'll give you a couple minutes for each person in a pair to do an invitation, and then we'll come back and debrief and share a little bit. Okay, go ahead.
We're gonna watch a movie. My place on Friday.
Yeah, we're just gonna do this.
That was not real.
You don't want to go go.
Yeah, I'll see it.
That's awesome. Remember yoga?
If we would like to invite you guys.
It's like probably 8 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah, I can remember that. Me. This fun.
Hey, I'm going to an early onset dementia clinic. Friends.
All right, come back.
We're going to actually cover ourselves in chocolate roll around and pie.
So some feedback. How was that? And how either was it awkward? I know it was probably a little awkward. Yes, role playing is just always awkward, but that's part of doing that is so you get more comfortable. So feedback on what you guys did and how it went. And
Honestly, like I love to invite people, but this time it was very awkward to say because it was like kind of it was not natural, like yeah.
Yeah,
But it was fun.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I recently just walked in and the lady did such a wonderful job summarizing everything. And she did a wonderful job of being very natural about invitation. And one of the takeaways that I learned was when you're inviting someone, don't make it dependent on them, whether you as the invitee go or don't. And that was a big takeaway for me.
Oh, that's great. Yes, it is. So you want to make it as low bar and low pressure as possible for people, and just so they can feel that warmth and welcome. Anybody else? Yes.
I think having the why you're going in there,
Mm-hmm.
like it doesn't have to say this is why we're going, but like including the reason why you're doing the thing in the first place
Mm-hmm.
can kind of like work to make it kind of seem interesting,
Mhm.
and make it even more, tell them a little bit about yourself
Yeah,
that way.
sure. Good. Yes. All right. Anyone? One more person or not? All right. Stay tuned. There's more role playing. I know you're excited. All right. Spiritual. If you can't read it, it says spiritual conversations. How do we have them? One of the ways is asking good, underlying thing is asking good questions. Okay. So that's part of the thing with our students is how do we have these conversations? Take a step back. If you've ever tried as a parent of a teenager and it's almost a second teenager, especially boys, you kind of know that part of having a conversation and finding things out about them is the key to that is asking the right questions, right? So here's like I have my teenager, my older son, Raleigh. He'll come home from school, and if we can get over the first part of his grumpiness, because he doesn't like school, but that's okay, is so I'll ask him, say, hey, Raleigh, how was your day? Fine. What'd you do today? Stuff. Do you have any what's your homework situation look like? The usual. So I'm not getting anything there because, one, he's a boy, but, you just kind of have to pry. So it's asking the right questions. So it's like, instead of saying, how was your day? And I will say something like, tell me about your day. And make him use more than just one or two words. And still, it's a very short answer I get from him, but it's progress, So that's kind of what we need to do when I have spiritual conversations. So when we tell our students, talk to our students about this, they all of a sudden, okay, they get a little nervous, talk about spiritual things. How do I do this? Do I just come and hit someone in the face with, you need to know Jesus? Let me tell you about him. Or are there other ways to do that? And so there are other ways. And there's two ways that there's probably more ways, but there's two ways that we look at it for them. And it kind of helps them, relax and look, okay, I got this, or I can do this better than that. And the first one is what we like to call side door conversations. Side door conversations involve indirect questions and statements, and mostly autobiographical. So you're talking about yourself. You're sharing about your experiences, your worldview, your church, your testament, making a lot of I statements. Okay, so when I'm making statements about, I went to church, I went to church this weekend, and this is what I experienced. It's not as threatening as saying as you should go to church and have this experience or something along those lines. Okay, and we can see that Paul demonstrates this in Acts 26, the early part of Acts 26, when he's interacting with Agrippa. He spends those first 23 verses telling about his conversion and his experience of coming to know Jesus and what Jesus did in his life. Not, you need to change. It's what Jesus did for Paul, and that's what Paul's telling Festus about, or excuse me, Agrippa. So types of side door conversation or questions you can ask. Do you have a spiritual background? I'd love to hear about it. Do you ever pray or think about the afterlife? Could I share my story with you? And, in these types of questions, it's always going to be dependent on the level of relationship you have with that person. If you've just met them, you don't necessarily want to come and say, could I share my spiritual story with you? They'd be like, get away. No, but it's that the level of relationship you can have with people, it will dictate those questions. Okay. Would you like to attend X event with me? Would you like to join our reading group or our Bible study? We're reading this book. So one of the best questions that I like about that, and I guess it could be side door or front door. It's just kind of it falls in between. I think it's more side door in my personal opinion. Is when they make a statement, you go, well, what do you mean by that? Especially when someone's belief. What do you mean by that? So you put the impetus on them to explain what they believe, and you don't look like the person trying to push something on them. You're just trying to learn. Okay. And a lot of times you ask them that about some things, and they don't have a real reason for what they believe or why they hold a position. It's, someone told me about that, so I just hold that. That's the interest. And all this side door, front door stuff that we're going to talk about comes from a book, Witness in the Academy, by a friend of mine, Rick Mattson. So I have to give him credit for this. I was part of the conversation with him when he wrote this, but this was all his doing. The other side is the front door. So this is the more direct Right, you come and you knock on someone's front door, you're very direct about being there. If you're more familiar with them and more casual, you come in the side door. In the front door conversations, you challenge the other person's beliefs in a nice way. You don't want to be too confrontational. Use a lot of you statements or you questions in that, and you're questioning why they believe what they do and offer our alternatives. And then Paul pivots here in Acts 26 when he's talking, I think, again with Agrippa, and he confronts him directly about, he was saying about why you should believe in Jesus. And I think Agrippa even makes a statement is, if you keep up with this, I'm going to believe in Jesus. I'm paraphrasing greatly, but that's along the lines that he's a lot more direct than he was earlier in the chapter. He's more direct about you need to believe in Jesus in that sense. All right. Questions so far? Side door, front door. Okay. What's types of front door questions? I don't understand X in your worldview. Could you explain it? You're asking the question and putting the impetus on them to help them explain, and you are the learner. You're still not just like many of my students would believe. You're not forcing your beliefs on them in this case, even though you're more direct, but you're still wanting them to explain it. Do you feel satisfied with your life and your beliefs? Have you ever considered turning to God for help? Would you like to attend Easter service at my church with me? The more direct, it's front door because it's direct, but it's also very obvious of where you're going with that question. You're wanting them to be more open to Christianity and to Jesus, and that's where, and it's not hard to see. That's where you're going with those questions. And all of these conversations, I should say that we need to be discerning on where the Spirit leads, but also discerning on where that person, letting them be the one to control how far that conversation goes. If you ask a question, you feel this is what, I should ask this question, and they shut it down, it's shut down. It's not a bad thing. Don't be offended by that, because maybe next time they'll let you go a little further. So those are the two things. We discern what the Spirit's leading us to ask, but then also what that person is willing to do. In the least amount, that question you ask, they won't answer, is going to plant a seed, and it's going to come back, and it's going to play back in their head, and the Spirit's going to work on them and that. And that once again goes back to God's the one that's going before us in this. So to summarize, front door, side door, or we suggest or encourage our students to start with side door because it's a lot less intimidating, a lot less. I would say confrontational seems too strong, but it's less direct. So you share things from your life. You ask them to share things from their lives and their beliefs. And then as things move and progress, especially relationship-wise, you can move to the front door, comparing and contrasting worldviews, asking more direct questions. Now, here we go, some role playing. So, like I did last time, Elizabeth and I will model that for you. You guys can choose whether or not you want to do a side door conversation or front door conversation. I won't dictate that, but I would ask that you do that. Hey, Elizabeth, how's it going?
It's going all right.
What'd you do this weekend?
This weekend, I studied all weekend. I've got my qualifying exam coming up in a couple of months. And so every moment we're studying.
Wow. Yeah. I remember those days. But I only could spend like half my weekend studying because I went to church on Sunday and really had a really good experience, a fun time with my friends there.
Does not stress you out? That's a whole day of lost studying.
Yeah, but it was refreshing in that sense. Do you have any kind of spiritual background?
No.
No. Okay. See, you see how that goes? This was an epiphany to me, and just a few years ago, that I couldn't remember how many conversations I've had with people about, hey, what'd you do this weekend? This, that, and the other. But it never occurred to me until recently that half my weekend is probably taken up with going to church and spending time in my faith community. But I never told people that. And then how easy and non-threatening is that to be able to say, hey, yeah, I went to church, or I went to a retreat with my men's group. And this is what we talked about. So it's a very something that, for me was an epiphany and enlightening. Thank you, Elizabeth. So turn again to your partners. Try to have a side door or front door conversation, and then we'll come back and we'll share.
And why do you refuse to repent? Did you go to church? Did you go to church? Yeah. See how good I am at it? Good.
A little.
Ah.
A little.
Yeah, no.
Like one
No, I'm just trying to. I'm not.
I remember at the DF conference, we went to the workshop and
It was again.
together and like, well, that's the conference.
They're all the same.
Oh, that's interesting. That's
I've
interesting.
never wanted something
Well,
that have
yeah. That kind of talks your personal experience, like you're not a
Players for real life or role play? Okay.
I mean, honestly, any Christian adult Christians are. I mean, if I didn't know any, they're all hypocrites. Me, no, we all are.
And you're not judging anybody right now.
Oh, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Oh, honestly.
What do you think?
I do it, I see it.
Let's go. Let's go.
You guys should probably try. But you guys started doing it first.
All right. We'll come back. I don't know if everybody had an opportunity, but we don't want to run out of time. So how was that? Beyond being awkward and a little funny, how was that experience of having those conversations? First, if you're going to share, tell me whether you had a side door, front door conversation, and then share your feedback or whatever. Yes.
Our conversation was pretty fluid, I
Okay.
think, from the example that was provided up front. The abruptness of like, no, I don't have a spiritual journey or experience. It was like, I could see myself kind of freezing up. And it's should have been just like, oh, just kidding. I don't, okay,
Yeah.
Luckily, the person I role played with answered very kindly and they said, yes, I did. Anyway.
Yeah.
And so it was really nice to then kind of go into detail on the way that we ended up with that conversation.
To like this group
it was very organic just because we're all moms, we all have kids. And so it was very like she started with like a show that her kids watch that has a biblical background. And that was just very easy to be, oh, yeah, I know I haven't heard of that one. And maybe my kids would like it. Is it safe for kids? And so just, just knowing that, yeah, I'm in contact with a lot of moms. I'm in my day to day, wherever I go, library or whatever. And so this group has been very organic and just knowing that, those commonalities or common things can put you in those situations.
And that's a very important part where the role play isn't necessarily going to be organic. But in our real life situations, those conversations, they're going to be organic and they're going to come. And that's where you need to have one ear listening to the Spirit and one ear listening to your friend you're having that conversation with is what did they just say? Did they say something? And think, oh, maybe I should ask about this or bring this up. Like, yeah, what an experience from with your own children and things like that. That's where those conversations are really start to flourish. Anyone else? Yes.
Well, ours, I think, I don't know how we even started it.
Well,
but
ours was, I played the antagonist,
Okay.
the antagonist.
Okay.
wasn't as receptive, but I think it was good practice because it kind of brought up some points where it's like there can be some situations that aren't like, oh yeah, I'm super open. I want to tell you everything about me, And so it was like I had to come up with different questions on the fly.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure out like what type of person is this, and like what have they kind of dealt with in their own life.
Right. And I would say this is one of the things I tell my students is that you will undoubtedly be surprised how open your friends and your colleagues are to have these conversations, because in our heads we're like, they're not going to want to talk about this, but if we don't bring it up when the opportunity presents it, we'll never know. But my guess is, and my experience has shown that people are a lot more open, at least initially and stuff, to have those conversations than we expect. One more person, maybe, want to share? If not, yeah.
Did a great job. I feel like oftentimes when we're interacting with people, the word busy comes up. Oh, I've been busy. Things are busy. I'm doing this and that. And she asked me, like, is that satisfying for you? And that can be an end to like, have you ever considered faith? And has that been satisfying? Or I've found that to be satisfying.
Yeah.
So I feel like busyness is kind of an end sometimes as well.
It is very true. Very true. All right. So to kind of wrap things up before I get to the Q&A, so the goal of our 3-2-1 evangelism is to make evangelism for our students and then for everybody less scary and more accessible, by helping them understand that God is the one that's responsible for the results. We just have to be faithful and obedient when He opens those doors. We want to equip them with the tools, the skills, and the experience. So conversation skills, the inviting skills, understanding of hospitality, and then the structure of the 3-2-1 to do that in community. Okay, and I think this works well, not just with our students, but it can work well with a small group or some kind of community group within your church. I mean, you don't have, so see, that's where you could host those hospitality events, and you could host it in your small group or some kind of other event to make that. And also, I'll give you a caveat, especially within the church. A lot of times you're like, how do I do an invitation? Do I want to bring my friends to my small group and make an invitation? Well, it could be you invite them to an event at your church where an invitation is going to be made. That is another thing that can be done. So we're all can play a part in that. And you don't have to necessarily always be the one that makes that invitation. You can bring them to an event where that invitation is offered. I want to offer a quote because we work in the context of the university. And so we want to, transform our students so they can become world changers and really impact the university. And to kind of give you perspective on that, I love this quote from Charles Malik, who's a former president of the United Nations. And that quote was, "The university is a clear-cut fulcrum with which to move the world. Change the university and you change the world." So, so InterVarsity has a real heart for the university. If you have a heart for students in the university, we'd love to talk to you some more about that. It's just a little plug. But for, so we can see, we want to change the world. We can change that through many different avenues, and the university is one of them. All right. Questions you have about whatever was talked about? Like I said, I have those 2+ cards if you wanted any of those to kind of work with the Pray for 3 Friends daily. And then the Witness in the Academy by Rick Mattson. I have copies of these. I have a few copies of these for $5. And then the I Once Was Lost book, which explains and breaks down the 5 thresholds in more detail. I have those as well. I think those are 10. So you can see me afterward. But questions? Yes.
I'm really interested. I feel like I have to learn more in depth about other people's religions before approaching them, and more so come to them with a level of understanding, so that then I could maybe introduce Jesus into the conversation. At what point is like too much information about another religion? Like, you see what I'm
Right. Yeah. I just see. I think maybe that's yeah. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
So I work with international students at UT Dallas, and I totally get that impulse and that feeling like I need to understand like all the places they're coming from. But then I find that like, what I learned about Hinduism or Buddhism or whatever, like, what a textbook or whatever will tell me isn't necessarily going to match up with their experience of Hinduism or their brand of Buddhism. And so it's like, it can almost be more harmful to like make assumptions of what they're going to believe. And so that's why like that is a great place for the side door questions of like, oh, like what is like holi's coming up? Like what is for in the Hindu religion, like what does holy mean to you? Like how did your family celebrate it? Like why was it significant? Like it's a good opportunity to learn and let them tell you rather than study ahead of time. And like some of that studying is obviously good, but I take the burden off me to feel like I have to understand everything about their religion first. So yeah.
Yeah, I would encourage you to like they're probably the best source for that. And so to just ask them, hey, I would love to understand your beliefs. And could we sometimes spend some time doing that? And so that's I think a beautiful thing. And then like we can also flip that around when someone asks us a question about our faith or Christianity that we don't understand. We'll be like, let's look at this together as well, and we can both go and understand it better. So can work for it. Yes.
It's very desirable to know philosophy of religion from other people. But based upon a conclusion of one of the famous religious historian from University of Illinois, Chicago, said that human being across the ages and over the world, the human being have 3 major needs. The needs for transcendence, the need for self-significance, and the need for communication. If we will approach these 3 major, universal needs, we may hope that we have a successful venture.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's for talking about these Bible or just faith related issues, questions. Just, sometimes maybe not only one person, maybe especially in a group, maybe 2 people with good faith communicates there that might be good, just beneficial. Do you think that would be a kind of a practice, or do you encourage that? Like when ministering for college students, maybe a group of 10 people. For university, that would be 1 person working there to do this ministry, or you would encourage maybe 2 or 3 even together, serving in a group?
Well, when reaching out to their friends, you mean?
You do that, yeah, be interested, the ministry people doing these things. For example, only one person is on the campus.
So
You do that by one person, or
it depends on the campus. There's campuses that have like multiple staff people, some that have just one. But what we do is we want our students to be the leaders. So we train our students to lead the small groups, to lead the ministry. Our goal is to be the shepherds and the resources for them. And just kind of like, okay, I'm here to guide you and with the leaders and stuff, and just to guide the group while they are the ones leading. And it serves multiple facets of, they develop those leadership skills that they can, one, use in the church as they become adults, and 2, in their jobs in the secular world as well.
how about faculty?
Yep.
Is there any difference or any special thing to consider when you have a conversation group with a few faculty people?
Well, first of all, faculty are a lot harder to get together.
Okay.
But yeah, I think sometimes faculty are less willing to lead their own. So my personal experience is that I'm the one that's initiating a lot of it. I'm the one that's kind of taking the point and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. Let's pray together. This is what we want to study. And they're more than willing in that case to do it. But I think a lot of times they're the one, they've done so much responsibility that they just kind of don't want to be the leader in that sense, which is understandable.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. We've run out of time, but we could run a talk.
Thank you.
Oh, and then as he mentioned, all his handouts are on the web page. You have to go where it says watch online, and then it will have like a list of the Zoom links or the Teams links, and then below that it says 3-2-1 evangelism, and it's like one folder there.